realized that the reason why I'm not reaching a bigger audience is because I'm I'm kind of just putting it on my Facebook page, so I should put it on my Twitter. So I'm gonna go do that right now. Hold on one second. All right, I'm gonna put a tweet out right now. That's not how Twitter works. Twitter doesn't have any agreement with PlayStation and or other thing. On my YouTube. All right. Hopefully the thing comes in. All right, man. Let's continue this game and talk about Pompeii. But not only the leaders, but also people have a lot of responsibilities when it comes to getting information out and keeping information around. People have a responsibility to be able to get the factual information, and also realize that sometimes you can. That's the reason why any protest or anything like that could be turned into a witch hunt or a riot, whichever one you realize is because you're kind of destroying your own community.
Something's breaking through.
But we're gonna see if we can destroy these dudes now. Oh, that's a quick one. That was a quick one. So what has a lot to do with a lot of different people, and it really has to do with a lot of the education that goes around. People can say that, oh, it has a lot to do with what state you live in or what country you live in, but there's always signs that a situation will be like say for instance, there's kids in Tahiti and like more island waterlocked areas that know by instinct because of their parents telling them that if the water recedes to a certain level, you have to run inland and get away from the water because there's a tsunami. And it's very tricky sometimes when you live in a landlocked area. It's hard to be able to gauge sometimes the weather patterns because you're not able to see the water chopping, or you're not able to see how big a wave can be. It's a lot harder sometimes to be able to gauge the weather, especially if you're not connected to the news in a third world country of some kind. And basically every single country was a third world country back in those days. So there are a lot of people who were seen as witch doctors and things like that, and elders, even though like Alright, so I finished off that dude. Yep, and didn't realize a bunch of stuff, but there was a lot of times where people... Somebody wants to send me a message on Instagram. I'm usually the one kind of person that does not like that. Who's Elsa? Elsa is a ghost. Alright, cool. I'm glad to hear it, and that was declined. Because, alright, usually people who,
Above us! Something's breaking through!
like a lot of Disney films, tell you about a little tidbit of information about, God damn it. Yeah, so if I try harder, then I'm usually able to, like, evade death for a little bit longer. Should try to evade these guys more often.
Father, you're almost dead!
So, a lot of these different places, they had certain cultures, and those certain cultures would be by the witch doctor's telling, I guess. They had a certain understanding of the weather, of the tectonic plates that moved around underneath them. They were aware of their surroundings, and they always thought it interesting to be able to be there when certain events happened. And it was a basic rite of passage for a lot of people sometimes to be there during certain events, that in culture or in environmental schemes. The reason why a lot of people didn't really understand that sometimes it wasn't really good to be there, because a lot of times when those bad things would happen, or anytimes those, because they were bad for the environment, and sometimes because they didn't understand that there were irradiated materials. There were always irradiated materials, and that's literally what was in the groundwater in Russia. I mentioned earlier in another podcast, or in another thing, that the groundwater has been irradiated mostly in Russia with radiation poisoning, and that's a big thing, because it doesn't dissipate. It keeps irradiating, keeps eating flesh. Especially, this is a big thing. When radiation reaches certain viruses or certain bacteria in certain areas, the bacteria can become cannibalistic and eat other bacteria and then mutate. It's very hard to understand, but in processes of quantum and bacterial effects, the vibration that certain radiation gives off can kind of turn a smaller bacterial virus into a kind of sentient virus that can, like, latch on to things. not like a Venom or anything like that, or any kind of like sci-fi anything. It's more of like a paste or a goo or something like that. Like it latches on to certain chemicals. So the mud inside of a certain thing, or the goop that you see, the algae inside, and that's what makes certain plants poisonous, which they think that nature is saying something back to us or some sort of thing. It's actually because of certain irradiated materials that depleted themselves, but before they depleted themselves, they attached themselves onto a certain virus, and that certain virus attacked a certain plant because it liked the way that it tastes, or the way the proteins that it gave them, basically, because it never really saw any environmental change. But as that virus changes, if it's introduced to more people, like say Russia, for example, that has a certain amount of people and a certain amount of things, the virus itself stays dormant inside of a winter shell or something like that, and then wreaks havoc on an environment in the summer, because a lot of people don't realize that that's what happens. And that's where the zombie virus can come from. It's a reality. It's not a fantasy. I think a lot of people don't realize that where those kind of things come from, where those kind of whatchamacallit, those direct to TV videos sometimes come from, those alien creatures and things like that. A lot of times they'd have their core, or like not alien creatures, but meteorites would hit the Earth, basically. That's the reason why a lot of people didn't realize that those discuses in Da Vinci's paintings weren't actual discuses. They were irradiated comets, or falling stars, for example. Like, say that was a disc shape. Well, if you realize this, that if a rock and or a tectonic a rock or an asteroid goes into a planet's orbit for a while. If it goes into a planet's orbit for a while and then goes toward their atmosphere and goes into their atmosphere, it gets burned off at an angle. It gets burned off at an angle as it goes into their atmosphere, and then an environmental shift could pop it back out into outer space, and then you have your saucer shape. Because as it goes and connects in with the environment, as it goes and connects in with the top layer of their the top layer of an atmosphere, when it goes into the atmosphere, it goes in at an angle and then shoots back out. Like so say the comets or the night sky or anything, them perceiving the moon to be fuller or closer than it appears. It's a result of taking hardcore lucid substances, but also too it's because of a certain chemical in the brain that makes it seem, or makes other objects that are further away seem clearer, and we have that in our natural evolution, so it's kind of weird. But all these factors played into what Pompeii experienced beforehand, and understood that their leaders were going to take care of it, even though their leaders were ill-prepared and not ever, fated to ever stop a volcanic explosion, whether it be irradiated or not. Also, the reason why they know that it was unexpected, mostly unexpected, because there were a lot of people that were still in their homes. I mean, I guess that an evacuation probably happened as soon as they saw it, but the people who didn't see it were inside their homes, and so there wasn't. I died again. So, there are a lot of things that went on during a bunch of periodical things, and also that's thing is uneven. That's weird too. It's alright though. That is really weird that it's that uneven. It's alright. It looks cool though still. It looks really cool. So there were a lot of things that happened in certain instances, like the fire raining down on the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. It was a real city. It's just there are actual like things in the Vatican that they keep held up about these cities that actually existed. That's the reason why I still don't trust the Vatican, because it's not an open library. All right. There we go. Stupid fucking creatures. So, the things that happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, it had nothing to do with whether or not people were actually good or not or anything like that. It had everything to do
What is it?
with acid rain,
Stay close.
which happens a lot in the desert when there is water or floods.
What is that? So we're going towards the scary scene?
Oh my gosh. She doesn't take that much damage away, but she's very elusive.
Use your arrows.
There we go. That's cool. So, in these certain cities, people said that it rained down fire and all the other different stuff, or somehow rained down some sort of something.
I still don't understand why that man attacked you at our house.
I told you, boy. I know nothing more of it.
What's that up there?
Soft Starathum steel. Starathum steel. That's right. Oh, that's right. There we go. Silver. Alright, so what would happen in these cities is an environmental change would happen. Like say for instance this castle right here. It would happen like an environmental change inside of, like say for instance, there's a people. These people in some other city. We're not going to name them an immediate city. I know this has a lot to do with what's going on in my city, but there are environmental changes that are happening, and they seem to be kicking up more wind, I guess, in certain areas, and also making things a little bit colder, I guess, only because there is an even keel of seasons and stuff like that. I don't know why. This is like, it's never really gotten to me that people really believe this, that if all the ice melted in the polar ice caps, okay, all of it, if all of it melted, we'd still have the same amount of water on our planet, the same amount. When you have ice and that ice melts, okay, the water level goes up. Unless you have hollow cubes, the water level goes up the same amount. Like it doesn't like, there's not more water put in there. Like it may expand, but it's still the same mass. It's still the same mass. Like no one's ever tried to explain this before, which is really stupid. Because it's still the same mass, okay? Even though it expands and pushes things out, okay? It's still the same mass, all right? So you're still getting, pound for pound, the amount of water, the amount of things that go up are the same, okay? It's still the same, all right? It's still the same. And after all the water melts, they believe or they think they believe, that the currents will stop. And that's actually a good thing, because then it'll go down 15 feet. All the rivers, sometimes even the lakes, because they have underwater feeders to it. And those are like underwater caves that feed water into certain areas. So, wait, what's this? Bitch. I do love kicking things. This is just like Might and Magic and Funhouse played. This is great. Oh man, he keeps yelling out my name and shit. Ah, so distracting. Having a son. Okay, so there were a lot of different cities that actually felt the what is it, the tsunami, and a lot of times people don't understand that most tsunamis can create, and the what is it, the Santana Maynard. Those are two different things that are dumb, because I don't listen to Tool anymore. And also, I don't listen to Matchbox 20. Alright, so, but there are a lot of times where, there were a lot of times in certain cities, like Mayan temple. So that has more to do with larger animals. People don't understand is because when certain civilizations become more astute and proper, I guess they start to treat their nature as a friend and coexist with them, even though they pretty much slaughtered all their animal friends and then even humans. And they don't realize that when you don't put up walls in certain areas, and I'm not talking about any walls on Mexico, because that's neither here nor there. I just think that they should monitor the places that actually have things more, because they would actually be able to, or set up passport places right before the border so people could actually get in a lot easier or something like that. And what else? Okay. So, thinking about a lot of stuff, the Mayans, for example, that's the reason why a lot of different people say that there were human sacrifices, and through human sacrifice, a lot of times what happens is animals get the scent of blood in the air. If that's not burned off, or for a certain time, animals are able to sense and smell blood, kind of like just, they can get a whiff of it. And if people have picked up a lot of herbs and things like that, then that kind of makes it smell sweet a little bit, or make the blood smell a little bit like keys. And that's where I think a lot of different animals came in and started kind of ninjaing their way into society and kind of like looking and stuff. And then once those animals got in, they kind of cleaned house sometimes at night. Like wolves that were bigger than normal. And back in the Mayan times, they had a lot of different animals that were not on this continent anymore. Like, that are not on this continent anymore. Like polar bears. Polar bears don't just show up in what is it, in polar climates. There are a lot of different animals that actually did show up on the frozen tundra of that place. But also too, you have to understand that there was a lot of trade between different places, and during the Mayan times there were a lot of different places that were still available, and in certain things, like conquistadors would trade and do a bunch of different stuff in certain areas, and then they'd find a civilization that was undiscovered. And a lot of times sometimes, since they found someone who basically could save them from their own fate, because they worked amongst themselves for so long, they basically made themselves crazy. Sometimes people just went along with those cultures. Sometimes the reason why those cities didn't have anyone in them is because they just got up and moved. Like, that has a lot to do with a lot of different places that have realized that if they went the same direction, or they went the same path, they figured it out, and you'll see ghost towns, because they just packed up and just realized that there were greener pastures in another area. That it's not that stupid to think that your area or the place where you stay at is under threat or attack from any environmental force, or not even just environmental forces, but forces of animal kind, and it's a natural, like, defense mechanism to want to leave, or to want to get out, or to want to go somewhere else. But also realizing that the ingenuity of a lot of different people on the West Bank and on the East Bank keep this place running. They will always keep this place running, because it's prime, and I'm telling you, this means prime. All right, prime 3 times, prime freaking crop areas. Once the groundwater is washed away, or not the groundwater, once the topsoil kind of gets off a little bit, kind of, and the water just gets saturated every once in a while, oh my god, prime crops, freaking awesome fertilizer. And when it dries up after another certain season, there's like so many different possibilities of what that could actually happen. And there's so many different people that actually realized this and started doing everything that they do in near or around New Orleans, and just selling it as fast as they possibly can to be able to get the fucking money back that they just invested in these massive amounts of equipment and stuff like that. So just realize that that's the reason why we have such a bustling and rustling city, is because of the outskirts on a whole bunch of different levels. There are people out there that are freaking making so much amazing products and selling them in the city, or getting with certain people that have the freight line that are able to push those different produces to different people. Once that stops, New Orleans stops. Once that goes away, or once that is no more, or I mean, it will be no more, like in a not in an eventuality, but in what would seem fleeting to a star, right? Not a person. What would seem fleeting to an asteroid that is hurtling toward a planet, desperately making itself into a saucer as it goes through its orbit and goes back out, or crashes down and sends some sort of irradiated material into the thing because of... That's not... I don't want to explain radiation in an existential sense, because people have explained radiation with like an othergodly force, or a god himself, or the one true God, blah. Whatever force it may be, it's more of a vibration, okay? And because of coming or being shot out of a star at some point, or coming in contact with a certain radiation. That changes the atomic structure of what's inside and or what's outside of the asteroid. And that in itself creates and makes it more irradiated, or makes it radiation proof, or makes it completely and utterly just makes you toxic. It makes you sick, because that's where they came from. The sick stick, the Kick-Ass 2 and all that shit. Pretty tight, right? The sick stick make people throw up and stuff like that. Of course, those girls were throwing up a bunch of cum. That's not true. That isn't. It's not that, but because it was just 3D rendered and stuff like that. It wasn't really actually done, or maybe it was done through hoses or some sort of thing. But and it probably was just 3D rendered. But the most I think that people really could what's the word? Come up with is, there have been a lot of civilizations to date that have hunkered down and made a go of it, and really tried really hard and put shit together and made some stuff after so many some odd tries of my website is going to be up soon. I'm going to be freaking posting some stuff, and hopefully I'm going to stop doing it on my Facebook page, and I'm going to start doing it on my website more often, because the reason why I came up with all these drawings and paintings and stuff like that was so I could eventually support myself doing my art. I don't want to do a Patreon, because I know that what Patreon entails. It entails basically them doing marketing for me, and if I rely on them only them to do marketing for me, and if I don't do marketing for myself, because I know that it may sound like, oh, Joe, you're making this up as you go along, and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of making it up, but only from experience that I've had with a lot of different places that I've tried to sell my artwork on. Like, I've tried to go walk around, I've tried to go do a bunch of stuff, I've tried to go to different things in the middle of a season, and they're like, oh, you gotta go before the season, or else they're not gonna let you do it, because they only give a certain amount of licenses out to Jackson Square. And that's why I'm not always about New Orleans, because it can be very secluded as far as an art form or art process goes. It can be not segregated or anything like that, but secluded. Like, there's only a certain number of people that are able to do that, and I want to do that stuff on my own. And if I don't have people who I'm featuring, then I'm still going to put my artwork on there, and I'm still going to put my prints, and I'm still going to make my t-shirts. So I'm going to make my t-shirts, and I'm going to sell them, stuff like this, like this, like that, t-shirts like that. Or like this. Would you buy a t-shirt that had this on it? That would be pretty cool, right? It's pretty tight, right? It'd be pretty tight as a t-shirt. It's got fire around it and stuff. It's pretty tightness, I think. It's got like smoke and stuff and everything. I'm doing a city whatever, I think, t-shirt too. My friend would probably appreciate it, but I'll do this later, though, because I don't want to do it without them, because then they'll probably just be like, Joe, what do? You're trying to drum up success, and you're... No, they wouldn't say anything, but I'm sure I'm not gonna do it without them, out of common courtesy and professional courtesy as well. So, I didn't even say anything, so, alright, good. No matter if you believe that a people exited this mortal coil, or you believe that the people kind of just got traded off or went off to some other land like a Dutch land or anything like that, or Europe because they thought it was easier, or some other place that they thought was good, you know, like they could have gone pretty much anywhere. And Alright.
What's that over there? A sealed chest. Earlier, you said people might try and rob us. I'll kill them if they try. I'm not afraid.
If we encounter men, you will stay out of it. Understand?
But I can fight.
You will stay out of it, boy. Speak no more of this.
Okay, what's this over here?
There's one down.
There it is.
Chains on both sides, maybe?
Whatever you think is the answer is usually your best bet. But there's so much speculation in history. There's so many speculative qualities about history and about our own history and geological surveys and all those other different things to be able to speculate on what a certain aspect of culture is for you. And I'm gonna get this thing. I'm gonna get it.
That did it. Batista! Not yet. The axe isn't working. Ready and wait.
All right, here we go.
Arrows will bring her down.
Damn it. Shit. I died. But the more you practice at something, not the more you die, because it's dumb to say that. It's stupid because it influences someone to give in to the fact of someone else's will and make them be easily malleable in the formation of things, which is what Russia does a lot, because that's what they did to the people they killed to be able to steal their stuff. See, it's fucked up that, oh my God, Native Americans, they get the blunt end of a deal. And I'm just like, hey, there wasn't a deal to begin with. Like, there wasn't a deal. Like, the only reason was like a lot of pilgrims were just like peace on earth, dude. And they smoked weed. Everyone smoked weed. Everyone did. It's the reason why, too, was because they were like, oh my God, I don't know where that came from. you gotta find out where they came from, and usually they grow their own. Especially Abraham Lincoln and all those other different people. They were all running and gunning, and when they sat down and had a puff or a smoke, they would usually mix their tobacco with marijuana. It's bad. It's bad as far as your natural defense makeup or anything like that. But realize this is that you deserve a break sometimes. You deserve a break from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and even if you're gonna do it, if you do it illegally, it sucks. It's because there's no way of knowing whether it came from a good grower or not. But if you do it legally, then realize this, that you're ahead of the game, and because of the fact that no, it doesn't matter that there's a market somewhere else and they go to different states. It's not because of that that's making those people like go to different states. They're literally moving. Like, that's literally what made people move from New Orleans in the first place. I don't know what people really got into, but I guess they were just had enough. They were tired of being pushed around in a city where it's supposed to be easy to get around. It's easy. It's supposed to be easy to make a buck. It's supposed to be easy to be there for people. It's supposed to be easy to take care of your fellow man, or help your fellow man, not take care of him. But I mean, I hate homelessness, so I really hate it, and I really wish that people would realize their potential and realize that they should be at managerial positions, and they could work so many different jobs just doing the work that they usually do, because they manage certain things, and it just happens to be with product. And if they were to get with people who had more money, then and not get with the people who are just like around, I guess, because they want to be around. I mean, it could be better, you know? Be yourself, and you are your own one-person bomb squad. You can defuse situations that happen sometimes, and you can make sure that you aren't caught up in a zombie apocalypse. Realize this first fact, that preparation is key. Understanding your whatever is coming towards you is absolutely key. And understanding to fix a problem, you first need to understand yourself, because understanding yourself and what you need is the best way of fixing a problem. Whether you sew, or whether you do different stuff, or whether you know what to do, what to eat, where to eat in certain areas of the wild, or anything like that, it's good to practice that stuff. No matter if it's hunting, or if it's gathering berries, or just anything like that. Realize that, because I'm not saying that it's going to be apocalyptic, but I'm just saying that it's not going to last forever. Be on your guard sometimes, but also be accepting sometimes too, because you don't know what people have gone through. Have a good day. I accidentally hit the middle button instead of the side button. Nice.